The fork never reached his mouth. Billionaire CEO Malcolm Devo, disguised in a plain hoodie and sneakers, froze when a folded napkin slipped discreetly under his plate. 4 words stared back at him. "Don't eat the steak." His pulse surged. For a man who had faced market crashes and hostile takeovers, nothing compared to this moment. Who would dare? Why him? And what poison lay hidden behind the kitchen doors? What began as an ordinary meal in Charleston's most elite restaurant was about to unravel into a story of racism, courage, and a single act of defiance that shook an entire industry. Malcolm Devo was not there for dinner. He was there for answers. At 46, he was one of the most respected black CEOs in America, a man who built a billion-dollar empire from scratch. Yet tonight, he walked in alone, stripped of luxury, dressed like an ordinary man. This wasn't a social visit. It was an investigation. 2 weeks earlier, an anonymous letter arrived at his desk at Devo Capital Holdings, the conglomerate he founded. The complaint was blunt. His flagship Charleston restaurant, The Cradle, was allegedly mistreating black customers and sabotaging minority staff. The claims spoke of slow service, food tampering, and an unspoken hierarchy where race dictated worth. Malcolm had learned long ago never to rely solely on reports. Raised by his grandmother in rural Alabama, he had seen what happens when the powerless go unheard. His success never erased those memories. It only sharpened his awareness of how racism hides in polished places. That's why he came alone, undercover, determined to see for himself. From the moment he entered the Cradle, the warning signs were obvious. White patrons were greeted warmly, ushered to prime tables. Malcolm was seated near the restroom, ignored for 10 long minutes. Waiters glanced his way, then looked past him. He remained calm, quietly observing. That's when she appeared. Naomi, young, weary-eyed, shoes worn thin. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down water. In that moment, she slipped the napkin, quick, discreet, almost invisible. He unfolded it. 4 words. "Don't eat the steak." It wasn't a plea for help. It was a warning, a risk that could cost her everything. Malcolm's gaze lifted from the napkin to Naomi's eyes. They didn't linger long, but in that fleeting second, he saw fear layered with defiance. She turned quickly, disappearing toward the kitchen. The restaurant around him buzzed with laughter, wine glasses clinking, forks scraping fine porcelain. Wealth and privilege filled the air. To them, the Cradle was the crown jewel of Southern dining. But beneath the chandeliers, a different story simmered, one written in whispers and folded napkins. Malcolm leaned back, scanning the room. At the far side, an older white couple ordered loudly. Within moments, their plates arrived, steaming, garnished, flawless. Another table of young black professionals sat nearby. They waited. No food, no refills. Their polite attempts to flag servers were unanswered. The pattern was undeniable. The memories clawed back. His childhood, his mother cleaning home so he could have shoes without holes. His first pitch meeting, where an investor dismissed him before he'd finished speaking because of the color of his skin. He had survived those days by building walls of discipline and strategy. But here, in his own establishment, those walls shook. He watched Naomi move carefully between tables, her steps cautious, but her eyes always alert. She avoided him deliberately, but the message was clear. She wanted him to know the truth. It wasn't just about his meal. It was about the kitchen, the staff, the system. Malcolm discreetly placed the napkin back under the plate, untouched steak cooling before him. He ordered coffee instead. Minutes later, Naomi returned to clear the plate, her hand brushing the napkin once more. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped it, like someone hiding a loaded weapon. The risk she took wasn't small. In restaurants like this, whistleblowers weren't protected. They were erased. One complaint and she'd be gone. Jobless, blacklisted. Yet she chose truth over silence. And Malcolm felt the weight of it. This wasn't just about a bad meal. It was about the hidden racism thriving in the very empire he built. If the whispers were true, then his wealth, his reputation, his brand, all of it was complicit. His chest tightened. For the first time in years, Malcolm wasn't thinking like a CEO. He was thinking like that boy in Alabama again, the one who knew silence could destroy more lives than words ever would. The decision came swiftly. Malcolm stood, leaving the untouched steak behind. Conversations paused briefly as he crossed the dining room, his hood drawn low, his sneakers squeaking against marble floors. He moved toward the kitchen, a place CEOs rarely dared to tread. Behind the swinging doors, the truth slapped him in the face. Naomi wasn't lying. He saw it instantly. Two separate prep lines, plates for white customers, garnished, meticulously arranged, handled with care. Plates for black customers, sloppier, rushed, and, in some cases, tainted. A cook smirked as he rubbed a raw steak across the floor before slapping it onto a dish. Rage roared inside him, but he held it tight, disciplined. He wasn't just a man in a hoodie anymore. He was the owner. The silence of staff cracked when his voice cut through the steam and clatter. Calm, measured, unmistakable. I own this place. Heads turned, jaws dropped. The room froze in collective disbelief. He pulled down his hood, and in that instant, every mask shattered. The smirks vanished. Fear replaced arrogance. Naomi, standing at the edge of the line, trembled, but met his eyes. Relief flickered across her face, just for a moment, before she looked away. Malcolm didn't shout. He didn't curse. His power was in his composure. With one sweeping glance, he made it clear the system was exposed and change was coming. The fallout was immediate. The head chef was fired that night. Investigations launched. Within weeks, the cradle underwent a complete transformation. New management, new staff, new policies. Training on racial equity was mandatory. Anonymous reporting lines were created. Naomi, promoted to assistant manager with full protection. But Malcolm knew this wasn't just about one restaurant. It was about an industry where racism could hide in candlelight and crystal glasses, unseen by those who benefited from it. It was about how easily silence becomes complicity, how injustice thrives when no one risks speaking out. That napkin changed everything, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. 4 words, written by a woman with nothing to gain and everything to lose, forced a billionaire to confront the cracks in his empire. Malcolm didn't speak publicly about the incident at first. He didn't need to. The changes in his businesses spoke louder than any press release. But months later, when asked in an interview about leadership, he said, "Power isn't about what you control. It's about what you protect. And if you're not protecting the people you trust, you don't deserve power at all." The story of that night spread quietly, not through headlines, but through whispers of respect. Employees knew their voices mattered. Customers noticed the difference. And Naomi's courage rippled outward, showing others that one small act of truth could dismantle entire walls of lies. So the next time you sit down in a fine restaurant, ask yourself, what stories hide in the spaces you don't see? What truths lie folded in the silence of those who serve you? Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with grand speeches or courtrooms. Sometimes it begins with a single napkin and the courage to use it.